Okay, great. It's noon and welcome back to Barnard via webinar. And welcome to the third in our webinar series, Networking Online and in Person, LinkedIn, and the Barnard Alumni Network. I'm Christine Valenza-Shin. I'm Barnard Class of '84, and I'm Alumni Counselor here at Barnard Career Development. Welcome back to those of you who have joined us for one or two of the previous webinars, and welcome to those of you who are jumping in for this topic alone, or perhaps this topic and the ones that follow. So we're going to talk about networking, and let's start with a question. Let's start on the positive. Give us a brief description of a time when networking worked for you. Just a capsule version, but we'll start on the positive side of things. What networking has done for you in the past, and then of course we'll talk today about what networking can do for you now and in the future. Cindy got a job through volunteer activity. Great example. All right, while you're thinking about what to share, let's get started. So networking is the building and maintaining of relationships. There's a lot of other definitions out there. Often when I say networking, it seems to immediately bring to mind big crowds and working the room, but networking really is building and maintaining relationships, and that is an organic process. It happens naturally among humans, and people have always gotten jobs through networking. It's obviously not the only reason you build and maintain relationships, but as people meet people and maintain their relationships with them, job-seeking activity has naturally followed. But now more than ever, networking is a key way to finding job leads, getting the inside track, even sometimes getting the upper, a boost into it. So I referenced this before, but generally speaking, the combination of the recession in 2008, 2009, the slow recovery, and the digitalization of the job search process has made the open market very difficult to break through, not impossible, but difficult, and networking has become really very important. Networking takes place both online and in person, thus our topic for today. Online tools have made it much easier to find and stay in touch with people, and that includes both people you already know and those you don't. One thing I've noticed is how much easier it is for me to keep it in touch with former colleagues than it used to be. I've had several phases to my career, and although I've stayed in touch with a handful of people from my teaching days back in the 80s and early 90s, I'm much more in touch with former colleagues from here at Barnard who stay in touch, whether it's via Facebook or LinkedIn. So, but in-person connections are often still more powerful. Meeting someone face-to-face often leads to her or him being more invested in your career and job search. And so that's why we want to both look at online and in person. And they complement each other. You don't do either one and avoid. When you meet somebody out in the real world face-to-face, you go home and look for them on LinkedIn and send them a follow-up request. When you found somebody on LinkedIn, you may not meet everybody in person that you are connected to in LinkedIn. That would be highly unlikely, but you will hopefully meet some of them or talk to them on the phone or Skype. So, okay. All right, so let's look at some of the responses we've gotten on positives, the positives of networking. Got a great intern after volunteering to guest lecture at local university. Great. So it works both ways, networking, not just to find something for yourself, but to find good people to work for you. So, excellent. Okay, let's take a look at, sorry. There we go. Using social media for networking. We'll look at the online stuff first and then go to some in-person things. It's a low-risk activity with potential for high reward. By low risk, I mean not in terms of security purposes or even privacy issues, but in terms of you can look at a lot of people, you can send a lot of messages out to people without a tremendous amount of time and effort. And, from the comfort of your own home, sitting with a cup of coffee in your pajamas, it can be low key, at least the initial phases of looking for people. Search tools make it easy to locate people in your field or in a field that you're interested in going into. Follow-up, though, is still key. It's not just about amassing numbers and amassing connections. It's trying to move those initial connections to something a little bit more meaningful. And whether that, as I said, goes into an in-person meeting or not, or an on the, live conversation on the phone, that's not always going to happen, but you may follow up in other ways, and we'll look at some of those. And to that point, quality over quantity. It's important, to build your network, whether it's on LinkedIn or just in the world, but the quality of those relationships is ultimately more important, because the whole point of having a network, of having these relationships that you've established and maintained, is to be able to turn to that network for, it could be professional opportunities, it could be to look for people to hire. It could be that you're happy where you are, but you would like to speak or present at a conference, and that's why you would like to be in touch with people. So there's a number of uses, not just job search. Okay. And then specifically about your Barnard network, my plan today is to use Barnard as a case study to demonstrate various facets of LinkedIn and other networking tools. And then most of the tools and strategies that I talk about today can then be applied to your other connections. So I don't mean to imply that you can only follow these strategies with Barnard people, but since we are all part of the Barnard network, we're going to look at that. And, using college connections, it probably is one of the main sources that a lot of people use for networking, is that college connection. So other connections outside of people you went to college with would be your former managers and colleagues from any jobs or internships or volunteer work you've had. And you also have fellow alumni from your high school. Some of you would have them from graduate school. And there's family and friends. So they're all part of your existing network. And you can use a lot of what we'll talk about today with that same group. The strength of the Barnard connection. First of all, just numbers. There is a huge concentration of Barnard alumni in the greater New York City area. So if you are one of those, if you still live here, there just are Barnard women living in the area, working in the area in all different fields. And so there's a tremendous, unlike some other colleges, there's a very strong local network close to the college. Outside of New York, the camaraderie is very high. The general rule of thumb, we say, is the further away you meet up with someone from Barnard, the more excited they're going to be. And we absolutely, there are, again, there's a preponderance on the East Coast. There's a lot of alumni in Boston, a lot of alumni in Washington, and then LA and San Francisco, the other coast. But there are Barnard alumni everywhere. There's Barnard alumni around the world, and you can find them and connect with them in person or electronically. The Barnard bond is strong. You should be willing to take advantage of that. Don't hesitate to reach out based on your common experience. So even if the person you're reaching out to you never knew, or went to Barnard 10 years earlier than you or 20 years later than you, we all went to Barnard. We've all been in this place, and that's a strong bond, and that's enough of a reason to reach out to somebody. Doesn't guarantee they'll get back to you, but it's definitely enough of a reason to reach out to them. And one of the things I like to say is, even if people weren't terribly happy here at Barnard or have unhappiness in general with the school, either at the time they were here or since then, most alumni remain very proud of having gone here and take pride in their degree and are very open to connecting with fellow alumni of all ages. Barnard alumni tend to have a strong commitment to women helping women. Many alumni are committed to strengthening women's advancement via networking. And many were helped themselves by Barnard connections and mentors and are happy to pay forward that support. So even if you feel that you haven't been terribly involved and who are you to approach this person, chances are pretty good that they have had some help from their Barnard friends and network and therefore are receptive to helping you. So we're going to first look at Barnard connections on LinkedIn. Right. The first thing that will happen, we talked last week about, setting up an account or updating your profile. Every time you log on, LinkedIn will generate suggested contacts based on Barnard and other aspects of your profile. So whenever you log on, there somewhere on LinkedIn, they'll pop up some people you might know, people you might want to connect with, and some of those will be Barnard people. You look at the suggested profiles if open. I mean, you don't have to do any of this. You may be on LinkedIn for a different reason, but occasionally you want to take a look at these suggested people. And if their profiles are open, if you click on them and you're able to go to their full profile, take a look at who you have in common, when did they graduate, where have they worked. And then, think about whether you want to connect or not. The goal, when LinkedIn first started, I know that my predecessor used to say you should only connect with people who know you and know your work and therefore could attest to it. I'm pretty sure that standard has flipped in the sense that a lot of people are pretty willing to connect to people that they may not have worked with or don't know personally, but still would like to be connected because of a common experience where they worked or where they went to school, or even just that you're in the same field. So again, quality over quantity. You don't want to just say yes to everyone, and if if there doesn't seem to be any particular reason to connect to the person, you absolutely are not obligated to, but take a look and see if what they do or where they've worked is of interest to you, and then it might be worth connecting. Contacts. You steadily want to add to your contacts on LinkedIn. Some of you already probably have a lot of contacts, but some of you don't. And in any case, wherever you're at, you do, as you meet people, you do want to be expanding your network. Every time you add a contact to LinkedIn, you are adding access to that person's contact. So if you connect with me, for instance, and I encourage all of you to send me requests if you haven't already, when you connect with me, you become what's called a first degree connection to me, which means we've agreed to be connected to each other like friends on Facebook. But you also then become second degree connections to everyone that is in my network. It is a first degree connection to me. And what that second degree connection means is you have one person in common, and from a LinkedIn point of view, it allows you to send a connection request on your own to that person. So that can be really helpful. And so one of the suggestions we make in sort of your networking checklist is to be logging onto LinkedIn regularly. And when you do check into LinkedIn, you want to have a little list of chores, and one of them is to send out some contact requests. If you're actively trying to build your network, or if you're new to LinkedIn, you pull out your old yearbooks, class lists, address books, staff directories to jog your memory. LinkedIn will do its best to jog your memory, but it is every once in a while, Barnard does all the staff phone directory online now, but they used to come out once a semester in these pretty colored paper versions, and I'll encounter one of those every once in a while in my files and just sort of look down my old department and say, oh, I wonder what happened to her, I wonder where he's working now, and it prompts my memory to do it. And those of you who were around in the 80s, maybe into the 90s, might remember Rolodexes. If you have any of those sitting around too, that's not a bad idea either. Again, you don't have to connect to everyone, but you're looking through to jog your memory for people that you really liked, or that you worked on a project with, or that you are just curious about where they are. Also think about which Facebook friends you might want to connect with on LinkedIn as well. You won't want to connect with everyone. Facebook is obviously, more of a personal social site, but a lot of people on Facebook do interesting things. And I know as in my role, one of my goals is to connect people in different types of industries in different parts of the country. And so I think about, I'll sort of go through my Facebook list every once in a while and say, hey, I've had a lot of contact, for instance, over the last year with alumni, Barnard alumni in LA, where I don't have a lot of friends, but I have a few from Facebook, and so I've been trying to sort of add my California people on LinkedIn as well. And in general, you want to, you can just search for friends and colleagues, past and present, and send a customized connection request. The reason I put customized in italics, you've all probably either sent or been on the receiving end of the generic connection request is, I'd like to add you to my professional network on LinkedIn. The stats are pretty good, indicate that if you customize that just a little and it doesn't take a lot of effort, that you have a much higher chance of someone answering back. So in this case, if it's a Barnard person, you would just say a quick explanation, fellow Barnard alumni, would love to add you to my professional network. Doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Okay. Another way to connect with people on LinkedIn is using groups. Groups on LinkedIn are discussion groups. So basically, if you belong to a group on LinkedIn, you are allowed to post questions, topics, promotions of interest. People often will talk about a book or a conference or a business they're starting, all right? And then others reply, so if somebody posts a question or asks, does anyone know about this, people will reply. And sometimes a long discussion gets going, other times it just, peters out. Most LinkedIn members belong to a combination of alumni-based groups and professionally based groups. So in our case, in my case, I belong to a fair number of Barnard groups, but I also belong to a lot of career counselor related groups as well. And that will be true. If you look at most people's profiles, if they belong to groups, it's usually a mix of the two. In general, when you discover a group, and we'll talk a little bit about how to find groups on the next slide, you want to read a group's profile page, see what they say about themselves, and then if you are interested, you click Ask to join. It's in the upper right-hand corner generally. And if the group name has a padlock symbol next to it, your request will be reviewed first. So that's a private group and there's an administrator who just checks. So in the case of Barnard groups, they don't do any, generally speaking, there's no official, they don't check to, for transcripts to make sure that you actually went to Barnard. They're just looking in your profile to see if you've identified as someone who used to work here or who attended here, and then generally admit you into the group. So how do you find groups on LinkedIn? I'm going to give you some details here. In a couple of slides, we're going to actually hop over to LinkedIn, but I wanted to make a few points here first and then show you how this actually works. And I'll give the same caveat as I gave last week. LinkedIn has just changed their interface. It's about 10 days since they launched it, at least most parts of it. It sounds like some parts are still coming. And so things have kind of moved around. It took me a little bit of digging to find some of the old suggestions and update them. So I'll give you that slight caveat. I might not have gotten everything right, and there might be new things that I discover in the next couple of weeks. So take that grain of salt. But if you want to search for groups, you do that by name or keyword. So maybe you saw a group in somebody's profile or you just want to do a general keyword search. The new search box in LinkedIn is at the top of the home page, sort of upper left. And you would type in keywords or group name of the interest and then click search. And then when you get your search results page, there's a row of tabs including people and jobs, and you want to click on the groups tab. And then browse, and then you can, again, click on any of those groups, read their profile, and then ask to join if you would like. You also can browse groups recommended for you by LinkedIn. So LinkedIn will give you suggestions based on your profile, based on, their various logarithms. All right, I took a look at this morning, and most of the things they recommended to me had a certain logic to them. A few were a little odd, so but it's definitely worth a look. There's a grid icon in the top right of the LinkedIn homepage, and you can select groups when that drops down, and then you click Discover at the top of the page. I'll show you that in a moment. We'll hop over to LinkedIn in a moment to go through some of this stuff. And then another way to, and then you can request membership. And then the other way to find groups is as you're looking at people's profiles, especially those in your field of interest, take a look at what professional groups they belong to and then consider joining those as well. So that's a good set. You can get a good sense there of like what are the popular groups, what are the sort of norm, what's the norm in your industry that people seem to belong to. Okay. And then a couple words about Barnard groups on LinkedIn. You definitely want to join Barnard-related groups on LinkedIn. I'll show you how to search for them in a moment. The largest one that everyone should join, unless you have some reason you don't want to, is called Barnard College Alumni and Affiliates. And at the moment, as of this morning, it had over 5,700 members. So that's a lot of people. And it's fairly active. People post there regularly. I checked this morning and there were posts from, definitely from the last couple of days or weeks. And again, you can post there. You can send a question out, you can respond to people's posts, and it's a good form of community. I've seen everything from people plugging things to a student heading out to California for the summer, asking for alumni for advice on where they should live or what neighborhoods they should consider, to just people recommending books. There's just all sorts of reasons people post there. And just a reminder, you also are a graduate of Columbia University. You're a graduate of a Seven Sisters College, and Barnard, I suppose, isn't technically Ivy League, but close enough. And there are alumni groups for all of these, so you can use those as search terms as well. And you can take a look at those groups. Okay. So as I said, we're going to hop over to LinkedIn in a moment so I can give you a little tour of some of what I'm talking about. But after we look at the groups, then the other thing I want to talk about is how you find new Barnard connections via LinkedIn. And there's three methods. There's a focus search using filters. And then there's Boolean searches. Some of you may be familiar with Boolean terms, and I'll go over a few of those. And then there's a more browsing approach using a See Alumni option, and I'll show you how that works. So actually, we're going to get out of the PowerPoint for a minute and go over to LinkedIn so that I can show you some of this stuff. So let me backtrack for a second to the groups. Okay. Good. Okay. So let's take a look at searching for groups by name or keyword. Oh, and I have to give you a caveat here again. I was doing some practice on this morning, and I started getting messages that my number of searches is approaching the limit unless I start paying for LinkedIn. So it's possible that LinkedIn is just going to freeze, and if that happens, we'll just go back to the PowerPoint and we'll take it from there. But just a little bit of a warning. So here's the search bar I keep referring to, and if you put it up here, so you can see some of the things I looked at this morning in my test. And actually, in order to not get that message, I think I'll wait. But you can see for instance, just for fun, put in film, women in film in New York. Robert Earl is my boss. I wanted to see if I could see what groups he belonged to. And in fact, actually, let's do that. That's a good example. But in general, just trying to see if I want to click on any of these to show. Well, yeah. So if I click on Robert, all right, he's our Director of Career Development. The way you find out what groups he belongs to is you scroll down to the bottom of his profile, and it shows you who he's following. But if you click the See More and click Groups, now you can see what groups he belongs to. And so as I scroll down this, it's like, oh, I belong to some of these, but for instance, I hadn't heard of that one. So I might want to click there, and I read the description, right? And then I could ask to join, all right? If I click that, it's going to, and I'll usually get a little message that says your, request has been received and is being processed. And then, sometime later, depending on how efficient the group administrator it is, I'll get a message back saying that I'm now a member. And so now I can take a look, okay? So that's an example of how you can find groups by looking at other people. The other one is to search here, and I think, I'm going to just think for a second. I just want to, great, okay. So if I hit film and women, okay, and then hit the groups tab, okay. So when I just search film women, it's bringing up women in film, like it's bringing up people. But if I want to switch and look for groups, then that comes up. And so you can see there's women in film in Media, Colorado, female entrepreneurs in Hungary, Bay Area women in film, and so the possibilities are endless, which is why you can see I started to add more terms to narrow it down a little bit. Okay, so that's one of the ways you can look. So you could just use the search bar and then hit the groups tab. You can look at a person's profile, scroll down, see what groups they're in, and then the other method that was mentioned in the slides, the grid, is up here. Okay, so they talked about the grid, and if you go here to groups, this is where LinkedIn recommends. Okay, so these are my groups, and then and so I can get to my groups, but then you hit discover, and these are the ones. All right, so again, I'm not quite sure why they're recommending the Iowa PhD network to me, but Inside Higher Ed makes sense, career coaches, counselors, and consultants make sense, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see how that works. Okay. And again, all of those details are in the slides, which I will send out to you tomorrow with a link to the recording of this webinar. Someone's asking, is the grid just for premium members? I can't see it. So one thing that's happening, so with the new rollout of LinkedIn, you may still have the old interface. I don't think it reached everyone at once. So yeah, it's not, I don't have a paid account yet, although it's looking like I'm going to have to buckle down and pay for it because I use LinkedIn so much as part of my job. But yeah, I don't have a paid one, and I have the grid only because the new interface seems to have appeared on my screen as of last week. But it sounds like not everyone has the new version. So, so I'm not familiar. There wasn't a grid on the last one, and I don't think there was a specific place to look for groups they recommended. I think they just kind of popped up on the old version. So, but you'll be getting the new version soon enough. So, but if you're having trouble navigating it, definitely call and set up an appointment with me, and I'm happy to do. I do that frequently. We'll sort of, it's actually easiest on the phone. If you're sitting in front of a desktop and I'm sitting in front, we kind of navigate LinkedIn together and show you different features. So, okay. And then I just wanted to show you, let me see if I wanted to show you Barnard Alumni and Affiliates. All right, so again, we're going down to the bottom of my profile. There's different ways to get there, but if you hit see more and then hit groups, you can see the groups I belong to. And this is the one I'm looking for. Barnard Alumni, oh, no, sorry. Barnard College Alumni and Affiliates, okay. All right, and so you can see there's 5,707 members, and someone just posted a week ago, all right, about supporting women in tech, and somebody else is advertising their freelance proofreader copy editor. So various different things. And you can join, and you can also, if you want to see if somebody's a member, you can click over here, okay, and search for members. So you can type somebody in. Okay. Excellent. The Xmas, the Christmas cards were my post. Somebody who is participating today posted. Excellent. Thanks. That was Elizabeth. All right, so now going back to so I'm now I want to go through the 3 search methods I mentioned, all right? So just to jog your memory on that, we're going to search using filters, and then we're going to use Boolean searches, and then we're going to browse profiles using the See Alumni option. So the first 2 methods are very focused and help you find very specific people doing specific things, and the other one is more of a browsing method. So let's go back to the home page. Right? On the old version of LinkedIn, the search bar is up in the middle here. In the new version, it's up here in the upper left-hand corner. All right, and what you want to do is click in there and get this little magnifying glass. And when you click on the magnifying glass, what you'll see is that filters come up. Again, in the old version, the filters used to be over here on the left side, and in the new version, the filters are over here on the right side. And so what you can see is that you can search by a number of filters. So first thing is you can click off. What this means is it's going to search it's going to search just for my first degree connections and then second degree connections. So these are all the people I'm directly connected to, and then these are all the people that I am one person away from. These are my connections, okay? And you could click on, if you want to do a wider search, you could click on third degree or more, so that means there's 2 people between you and the person you're looking for, but they don't default to that. So you can go by location, all right, and you'll see in each of these you can add, all right. So generally speaking, I think they're feeding me things close and probably also places that I've looked recently, but you can type in a location and it will start, it will fill in, you know, so if we do New Jersey, whoops, okay, that was not clever, sorry. Oh, okay, now, how did I, sorry. All right, sorry. Let me go back to home if I can get there. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button, obviously. Or I could blame it on LinkedIn and their new thing. All right, so we're back to our filters. Okay, so you can filter by location. You can add. You could filter by company. You could also add the company. Okay, you can filter by past company, by industry, by language, nonprofit interest, and by schools. Okay, so for instance, if we did, I always do Google. Google's fun. If we click Google, all right, and then I scroll down and click Barnard, it's going to bring up profiles of people who went to Barnard and work at Google. All right, so I have one first degree connection, somebody I am connected to who works there, who went to Barnard, and then everybody else is looking like a second degree connection. Okay, and so what you can do from here, so Lauren, since I'm connected to her, I could message her. Everybody else I could connect. Don't hit connect from here though. You always want to go into the profile. One reason you don't want to do that is, first of all, you want to know who you're reaching out to, get a little bit more information of them. Second of all, when you hit that connect from here, it sends automatically the generic connection request. It doesn't give you the option to personalize it, so never hit over here, go here. So let's take a look at Masha Ka, all right? So we click on her name and now we can see her fuller profile, all right? So she does corporate social responsibility. She currently works at Google. She went to University of Pennsylvania and she's in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we can get sort of this is her thumbnail. We can see what she looks like, and this is her summary that we talked about last week. So this is sort of her introduction to herself. Okay, it lets me know right away my mutual connections. This is very helpful. So as you're thinking about whether you want to connect to the person, you can click on those mutual connections and I can look down and see, oh, okay, I know a fair number of people. And if I really wanted to get in touch with Masha, I could, instead of reaching out to her directly, I could reach out to one of these people we have in common and ask them to introduce me. Why would I do that? From a strategic point of view, Masha is most likely to answer an email from someone she already knows. So if, for instance, I could get Abigail Sarah Lewis, who used to work with me here at Barnard, to write an email introducing the two of us, then I have a much better chance of actually engaging with Masha and being able to set up, say, an informational interview. But, you know, that's obviously a two-step process, so that would be the argument against it, okay? You know, sometimes we just want to reach out directly and skip the middle person, okay? So in that case, you could hit the connection request, okay, and you can customize it. All right, so you can add a note, all right, and this allows you to say, hey, Masha, you know, fellow Barnard alumna coming out to San Francisco in May, would love to connect. Or you could just say, fellow Barnard alumna, would love to add you to my LinkedIn network, and then once she does connect to me, then I can follow up with further things. Okay, all right. And so then, as we did last week, we looked at various profiles. You can see where she came from. You can check when she graduated, if she's listed. So she's class of 2011. We can look at what group she belongs to, and you can decide whether you want to send a connection request or not. Okay. All right. So then, so that's the filter method. Let me see if it'll take me back there. Right. Okay, and so you can do different things. You could, again, narrow it down by location. You can add even more filters. All right, so you can see how powerful that can be in terms of, just that simple thing. Let's say you are interested in a company, or you've applied to a company or organization. You want to see, are there Barnard alumni working there? You use the filter method to find that out. All right, next up is Boolean searches. Okay, so Boolean, I don't know the background. I mean, I think it's a it's a method of doing more detailed searches. And I'm just going to give one quick example. I'm not an expert at this. This is actually the sort of new to me. One of the things they took out of the filters in the new LinkedIn, they used to have keywords, and they seem to have taken that out, and they took out titles, which was another great way of searching. And so now, if you want to search for people with a particular title, or if you just want to use a keyword or phrase, you would now have to do that using a Boolean. It's most effective to use the search bar and use Boolean terms. So this refers to things such as quotations and not things like that. We'll go back to the slide for a little bit more detail. But for instance, I've had a lot of inquiries lately about a job title called product manager as opposed to project manager. So if I wanted to find people doing that, I would do product manager. And if I put it in quotes, which is one of the Boolean methods, it will only show me profiles where those two words appear together, that precise thing. Okay, so you can actually already see it started to work here, but if we click search, let's see what else comes up. Okay, so basically, then it's going to bring a couple of people, it's going to bring people up. So again, I have one first degree connection who is a product manager, John Lloyd. He used to work here at Barnard. And then I have a bunch of second degree connections who have project manager in their title. So again, it gives me someone to work from. Oh, there's another first degree connection. So again, I can follow the same system, click on their profiles, find out more about them, and send a connection request if I would like to do that. Or I may not be looking to connect to them. I may just want to read their profile and see what it means to be a product manager, or to take a look at their company. Okay, so that's just one quick sample of Boolean. And when we go back to the slides in a minute, I'll give you some more details, but that will be a helpful thing. And then finally, our third method is a more of a browsing method to find Barnard alumni. And so the way you do that is you find the See Alumni feature. Now, again, if you still have the old, LinkedIn, under My Network, there used to be a tab called Find Alumni. And so if you've got the old LinkedIn interface, you could look under My Network. Now, when you hit My Network, it just brings up my network, my list of people. But there used to be a drop-down menu. So now, in order to get to that See Alumni, we have to type in Barnard, all right, okay, and college, okay, and what I'm looking for is so what I'm looking for is this, which is Barnard's sort of company page. And the way you find out, the way you know if it's a company page is if it's got some sort of icon or symbol next to it. So then when we click on Barnard's company page, this is sort of its overview, so it gives an overview of Barnard and good. Oh, okay. So there's actually two ways of doing this. So you can click the See Alumni, okay, or you can look here under See All Career Insights. All right, so this gives a little thing. So let's try this just for fun. See All Career Insights. I think this will. Great. Okay. So this is an early preview of the alumni page, and we can go back to the old. Oh, okay. Before this wasn't active, so this is interesting. So they look fairly similar to the old alumni page to the new alumni page, but what this allows you to do is see. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is not. It's not working. Good. Okay. Yeah, this isn't a live version. It's an early preview. So I'm going to go back to the old alumni page. You'll see it looks relatively similar. It's the same concept. So when you get here, so basically this is showing us 17,551 people on LinkedIn who have Barnard, who are alumni, students and alumni of Barnard, okay? And what this allows you to do is to search by different criteria. So you can go by where they live. So you can see there's all sorts of possibilities here, okay? Where they work, this is by company, all right? So I could look down that list, all right? And what they do, okay? So, right? But I like the second page even better. This is helpful, but these are sort of broad categories. You might not find exactly what you're looking for. But you can click on any of these, and actually just to show you how that works, if for instance I wanted to look at Barnard and Greater Chicago area, you can see that the where they work changes, and let's say I wanted to find someone in marketing. All right, you see all the little bars changing, and then you scroll down, and now we've got a thumbnail. We get a thumbnail of various Barnard alumni. You get a little bit of information, all right, where they work, what their title and company is, their class year, all right, and then if I want to find out more, I click on their profile, okay, and then that'll take you to their profile, and you can get more details about them. I'm not going to do that because I'm trying to save both time and my searches, because LinkedIn's going to start charging me for them. And then as I referred to, there's a second set of columns, all right? These are really interesting, what they studied and what they're skilled at. So for instance, you could look for fellow majors, right? Or some of these other categories. And this can be also really helpful, like it can be a little bit more specific, like if you are, for instance, interested in event planning, or I want to see grant writing, different things. You can click on that. So let's say I'm interested in digital marketing. So now, again, all the little bars change. You scroll down and you can see. So it still has my filters from before. We're still in Chicago, but now I've narrowed it down to 4 people, and they have digital marketing somewhere in their profile. So that can be really helpful to me. Okay. All right. Okay, so we've got some questions, but I'm going to have to go back for them because I want to make sure we finish today. So I see your questions, and I'm going to circle back at the end. Okay? All right, so those are the 3 methods, and so let's hop back for a second to the slides just to review some of what we just said. Okay, and all right, so we looked at 3 ways of finding, and again, I see that some of the questions are that you're not seeing the same things I'm seeing, and all I can say to that is that, first of all, I'm looking at my profile as myself, so it's going to be a little bit different in terms of access, and secondly, we're in the middle of this shift from old LinkedIn to new LinkedIn, so try not to get too frustrated by not having seeing everything exactly as I'm presenting it, and but if you have a time-sensitive matter that you want to use LinkedIn for, and you need some one-on-one consulting, give a call and set up an appointment with me. But I'll answer some of the general questions as well. So we learned how to search by using filters, to use Boolean searches, and browse profiles. So again, this just spells out exactly how to do it. And again, you don't have to take notes on this. I will send these slides to you tomorrow. Okay. And so that's just a recap of what I showed you. So just to give you an example on some of the other Boolean things, we just did a quoted search, but you also can use not, all right? So if you want a programmer but not a manager, all right? Or if you want to be expansive, you could look for sales or marketing. If you want to make sure you get a manager and a director, you can put them both in. And then you can use parentheses to do an even more complex search. So you want to find people who have VP in their profiles, but you want to exclude assistant to VP, or I presume that means senior vice president. So now you can do VP, not all capitals, and then in parentheses, assistant or SVP. So now you've excluded that. So you can see how using these, if you can get familiar with these, you can really start to narrow down to very specific titles you want to look at. Okay, and that's for a lot of these, for the not or an and, you need to do it in all caps. That's how you make it work. Okay, so, and I'll confess, I basically just cut and pasted this from LinkedIn's. They have a help section, and so I just typed in searching on LinkedIn because I wanted to get some information about some of the new searching methods, and that's where this came from. Okay. And then browse using the See Alumni tab. That just is a recap, right? We selected Barnard's company homepage, we selected See Alumni, and then we browsed and clicked through what they. Okay, all right. Okay, so that is LinkedIn. Let me do a couple of, let me just check the time. Okay, let me do a couple of quick questions. When I look at your groups, I don't see Barnard College alumni and affiliates listed, just Mastermind and Women in Entertainment. That's interesting. So that could be, so the other thing, they changed this about a year ago, is some groups in LinkedIn are private groups and they don't show up on people's profiles. So if you would like to join Barnard, actually, you know what I'll do? Let me write a note to myself. When I send out the follow-up email tomorrow, I will send that link. So send link to the Barnard Affiliates group, and then you can click on the group, and as long as you're on LinkedIn, as long as you have a LinkedIn profile, it'll take you straight there, and you can request to join. I forgot about that aspect. Okay. Mine doesn't have a See Alumni button. Yeah, so you probably still have the old version. Can't find the Barnard College group even when I go to your profile. Yeah, so sorry about that. Yeah, that's LinkedIn again. With groups, they've made it more difficult to find certain groups because they found the groups were getting flooded with people who, you know, shouldn't be authorized. So they created this extra tier. So again, I'll send the link to that group out with the email tomorrow so that you can click on it and send a request. Okay. So Boolean search comes from, it's a computer, I think it's one of you people listening who knows tech better than me, but my understanding is that it's just a computer search method that's developed over the years. So again, hopefully that slide gives you a little primer in it, and you could definitely Google Boolean search for more tips. And as I said, you could go directly to the LinkedIn help page as well. Okay. But basically the reason I went into it is because they took away, in the new LinkedIn, they've taken away the keyword and title search. So Boolean is the way to, it's a more effective way to use the general search bar to get to those things like titles. Okay. All right. So moving away from LinkedIn, there is also a Barnard Alumni Network. All right. On the Barnard website. It's an electronic community, an electronic database accessible via the Barnard Alumni website. When you go to the new Barnard website, Barnard Alumni website, rbarnard.edu, you'll, in addition to being able to search for alumni, you'll also see that there's events and profiles and news. But what we want to look at today is for access to alumni database for networking purposes. All right. The database is continually updated as you send in information, and as you know, Barnard finds people you know, listed in the news, they update the database to keep track of us all. But the search tool is less refined than on LinkedIn. So the reason I talked about LinkedIn first is it definitely is easier to do a focused search on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn tends to be more up to date, although not for everyone. But the alumni database is here for you. Okay. And you can use it for networking purposes. And this basically outlines how to do it. You go to rbarnard.edu. That's the new alumni website that launched in the fall. You hopefully got some communications about that. And then you either log in if you've already created an account, or you, if it's a first-time login, you can set up an account. Okay. You're going to choose Find Alumni, choose Career Directory, and then go from there. So let me just show it to you quickly. Okay. And I have mine opened. Okay, so this is the new alumni webpage, which hopefully you've visited since it launched in September or October. All right, and it's got various tabs across here. So for instance, you can connect. We'll go back to that in a minute. There's all sorts of different things here. So we're going to look at Connect, and we're going to look at Find Alumni. And then you have a choice. There's the general alumni directory. I think that mostly is looking people up by name if you're looking for a particular person you know. And then there's the career directory. So when you click on that, it's going to ask you to log in. I'm already logged in, but if I weren't, it would pop up and it would either ask me to log in or to create an account. It's very easy to create an account here. They simply ask you for your name And then they'll give you, if you have a common name, they'll give you a list and say, which one are you? I think they ask for name and class year, and then they say, are you, Christine Shin that graduated in 84? And I say yes, and then you create a login and a password, okay? So in this career search, you can search by name, first name or last name. You can search by industry. And again, you can see where this is a little clunkier because, it's pretty, like somebody was asking me the other day, we were trying to find marketing, and I don't think marketing is in here. So that was really frustrating. But you can look by industry, you can look by occupation, okay? So actually, the one I like to do, I usually do journalism as the industry, and then writer, okay? But you also could fill in job title, company name, business city. The more filters, the more things you put in, the fewer results you're going to get. So my general recommendation is to just stick to one or two. Start broad, and then you can narrow it down. So like I said, I only picked an industry and an occupation. Then I hit search, and it's bringing me up 64 members. So this is from the alumni database. So it's 64 graduates of alumni who have identified journalism as their field and writer as their profession. And so now, same as on LinkedIn, what I can do is click. Actually, let's look at Deanna, because again, photo often means higher level of engagement in the site, so probably more up to date. So now I can click on Deanna, and I can find out if she's listed any information, and she has. She's got an email address right here. She's class of 95, and she's currently freelancer, okay? So the best thing to do if somebody lists their email is to just directly send them an email, all right? It's going to go right to their box, and you can, introduce yourself in a short and sweet email. If there's no email listed and you haven't been able to find contact information on LinkedIn, you can click send email, all right? And it brings up, it's going to come from my email address that I have listed with Barnard. Since I'm an alumni, I have my other address here. You put a subject and a message, and then when you hit send, the college forwards it. So you never see her email address. They're going to forward it to her, and hopefully she'll get it if she hasn't updated her email in the meantime or stopped using that account. So it's not the first resort, but it's not a bad last resort. If you haven't been able to reach an alumna any other way, you could try forwarding it through the college's system. Okay. Let me just see if there was anything else I wanted to show you while I was here. Good. Okay. Right. So now that gives you a brief little overview of that. And now let's go back and finish up the slides as we head into the home stretch here. So great. Okay. So just to recap what we did, my advice, choose only one or two criteria to start, and if you end up with a huge number, you would narrow it down from there. Okay? Right. So we spent a lot of time on how to find alumni. What do you do when you actually find them? All right. As we talked about, strategically, you're most likely to get an answer if you get an email introduction from someone you know in common. Second best is to email them directly if they have their contact information listed either on the Barnard site or on LinkedIn. And then third best is a LinkedIn connection request. The reason why is that, not everybody's on LinkedIn all the time, and not everybody has everything hooked up to their email. So they may not find your connection request until they log on to LinkedIn, which could be a week from now, could be 6 months from now. So that's why that's a little less efficient. Okay. And when you send out your email or message, you want to make it succinct, and you want to introduce the Barnard connection right away, or whatever your connection is, and ask for something concrete. What can you ask for? The most common thing to ask for if you're reaching out and networking is for an informational meeting or interview. Or you could ask for advice on a very specific topic. You never in the first contact want to ask for a job or a job lead. That's only going to come later if appropriate, if you've made the connection. The reason why is, first of all, it's an etiquette thing. It's just if somebody doesn't know you, it's just a kind of too bold a thing to ask for. You're just jumping over a couple of hurdles. And second of all, from a practical point of view, most people don't know about jobs or job leads, right? They maybe by coincidence there's something opening up in their company, but unless they work in HR, they're not going to know a lot. And so basically, you're giving them an invitation to say no to you. again, there might be a handful of people who have a job lead, but they might be reluctant to share it with someone they don't know well yet. So don't ask for the job or job lead, and don't attach your resume yet. Sort of for the same reason, you want to be able to connect with them in person, whether face-to-face or on the phone, not on paper. If they see you on paper, it could give them an excuse to say no. They could sort of look and say, yeah, that doesn't really fit, or I can't really help this person, and that's what you're trying to avoid. Okay, so ask for an informational meeting or interview, and that doesn't have to be in person. Obviously, it can be on phone. Ask for advice on something specific, but don't ask for a job or job lead, and don't attach your resume yet. Yeah, and so then, and we'll talk a little bit more in 2 weeks when we talk about the job search. We'll talk about, sort of then building on that, the networking. But basically, that's your formula. Short, sweet, to the point. Ask for something concrete. You're trying to give them an easy way to say yes. All right. Doesn't mean they will get back to you or say yes, but definitely those who do get back to you, follow up with, and you've added someone. Hopefully, you will have added someone to your network. I want to talk a little bit about in-person networking opportunities because that's an important part of this too. You want to look for events related to your field, either the current field or the field you're looking into. This can be lectures and panels or other events. It could be actual networking and speed networking events. Just keep in mind when you go to a networking or speed networking event, you're mostly going to meet other people looking for jobs, which can be helpful, especially if it's sort of a broad category, but may not be the most useful use of your time. And I wanted to mention meetup.com, which some of you might be familiar with, which creates meetups for all sorts of reasons. It can be career related, but a lot of it's leisure activities, and it's just an easy way to, if you go to meetup.com and tell what you're interested in, you can join different groups and find out about events coming up and meetups coming up. Definitely look at Barnard and Columbia events if you're here in the city, or even they do some regional things as well. And colleges and other nonprofit organizations and other educational institutions are a great source for events. They're often free or low cost. Those of you who aren't in New York, look for Barnard Regional Clubs and Events. You can find that on the alumni page under regional programming. And there aren't clubs in every city, every area, but there are alumni. And so if you don't find a club or event, you certainly can reach out to other alumni, get something together. You could reach out to the Alumni Relations Office and talk to the manager for regional clubs, whose name I'm blanking on because she's relatively new. I'm sorry about that. But you could reach out and start something. You could start with just an easy event. And then other in-person networking opportunities outside of colleges and higher ed would be to join professional organizations. You can go to meetings, you can go to conferences. Often there's mini conferences. A lot of professional organizations have that big giant annual meeting, and it may be far away, but a lot of them also have regional meetings or shorter conferences. So take a look at professional organizations you belong to or could belong to. And then volunteer roles, someone mentioned that up top, if you're within your professional organization, if you actually take on a volunteer role, a leadership role, or just an event role, that's a really effective way of networking as well. Volunteer work in general is a great way to meet people. It doesn't have to be within the field. It could just be a mission of interest to you. But people see you in action, and you meet people from all walks of life who are also volunteering, and that can be really helpful. And then I always say not to forget your dentist, hairdresser, and bartender. Who are the people in your life who are friendly, chatty people by profession and who meet all types, because you never know. So if you're job searching or if you're looking to make a career shift and, you go in for your hair appointment and they say, oh, what are you doing? Tell them, give them that capsule version of what you're doing, what you're looking for. You never know who they might know. Okay. All right, and when you're there at these in-person networking opportunities, you need to talk to fellow attendees. Some of us, that comes naturally too. Others we have to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. Also, you can bring a friend if you're uncomfortable. This is a relatively new point. This came up at a conference I was in October. Live tweet the event using, so a lot of events now, they have an event hashtag, and so you can use that hashtag if you're on Twitter to write a comment or just introduce yourself. And the reason I bring this up is at this conference conference I was at, one of the panelists opened up by saying, here's people who are attending this conference that I would love to meet. And she read off a series of names, and she had gotten them specifically. They were 5 or 6 people who had live tweeted the event. And obviously this was someone hooked into Twitter. It's not everybody, it's not for everybody, but that's an example of how social media can, help you even at in-person events. And then introduce yourself to panelists and speakers. Somebody mentioned actually at that conference that if you can do this ahead of time, there's much less of a crowd. And the goal is not to have a big in-depth conversation with them, but just to make contact, possibly get their card or contact information and give them yours. And then follow up, so especially in a situation, I mean, if you're at an event here at Barnard and there's a panelist who has something really interesting to say about your field or something you're interested in, you absolutely can shake their hand, have a quick exchange, and then get their contact info and follow up, add them to your network. If you're uncomfortable in large groups, if you're, as many of us are, think about volunteering for a specific role at the event. A lot of us are more comfortable doing something specific rather than just wading into the crowd. You want to trade business cards, contact information if you have them, and then follow up within a day or two, just remind them, we met the other night at the event. I was very interested in what you had to say about X. Would love to set up an informational interview with you, or you could just connect to them on LinkedIn and save them for a later time. Okay. Good. Okay. When you do have these informational meetings and interviews, we'll talk a little bit more about this in 2 weeks when we talk about the job search, but my general rule of thumb is to ask about her first. Again, I'm assuming you're meeting with a Barnard alum, but this could be anybody, could be him. Ask about him or her first. And some basic questions. What does she do? How'd she get there? What does she most like about her job or her field? What's challenging or annoying? And where does she see things going? The reason why you want to get them talking first is because then when you then switch to you can tailor your ask a little bit. So instead of just, starting out saying what you want and then saying, oh, that's not really relevant, now you have a few minutes to kind of process and say, oh, okay, she does this, so she's a good person to sort of ask about this type of thing. Talk about what you're doing, what you're looking for, and then if you ask for advice on some specifics, that could be really helpful. So a great thing to ask for is what titles you should apply to. Do you make a lateral move, or should you be moving up? If it's a new field or industry, what would be the comparable titles? Are you going to have to go down a notch or two? And then if the conversation has gone well, if you feel comfortable, you can certainly ask about salary ranges. Some people, we'll talk about this more later, but some people aren't super comfortable talking about money, but many people are more comfortable than you would think, and they're a good source of information. Okay, we're at the 1 o'clock mark. I'm going to wrap up here and answer questions, so stay if you can. Otherwise, I'll be sending the recording so you can skip ahead to the end if you have to get going now. Okay. Key thing in these meetings, they may offer to refer or connect you to others. You always want to say yes. Okay. And then if they don't offer that, you could go ahead and ask yourself. You could make the request yourself, other organizations or people to contact, and see how they respond. Following up is important. You always want to send a thank you to anybody that you've met with or talked with on the phone. If you haven't already connected on LinkedIn, definitely follow up with that. And always circle back when you've been doing this networking. When you do make a switch or get a new job, let them know. Shoot them a quick message, even if it's on, again, on LinkedIn or via an email. And it doesn't have to be the second it happens, but it's a great way to reconnect and also positively reinforce their good networking behavior. And just solidifies that relationship. Maintaining your relationships. As you start adding all these people to your circle, you can occasionally follow up with updates about yourself and to check in with them. You can occasionally pass on articles, events, or other information they might be interested in. And just by posting regularly on LinkedIn and participating in your groups, if you're connected to them, that will pop up in their feed. Again, some people pay more attention to that than others. Some people have it connected to their phone, to their email, but you will hear from people, and I will do that. People will write an article, it'll pop up on my feed, and it'll sort of remind me, like, oh, I remember when she came in a couple years ago. It'll sort of remind me to reach out, say a quick hello, right? And then if either via LinkedIn or other sources, you hear about people getting promotions or publishing something or switching companies, congratulate, follow up, see how it's going. Okay, one word of caution there. Sometimes people, someone will be identified as having a new job, but it's just because they've updated their profile. So it's not really a new job, it's an old job. So again, if you see something pop up, you might want to click on their profile and sort of see the details before you send them a message. Okay. And then always be ready and willing to provide resources and assistance for others. It's part of that paying it forward, paying it back, however you want to think of it. We want to encourage good networking behavior. So right now you might be in the asking phase, but you might be able to answer and help other people in turn, and I encourage you to do that. Next steps. So we're taking a week off. A lot of public school vacations are next week. So that's why I thought it would be good to take a little break because a lot of people are going to be away. Not everybody, obviously, but so we'll take a little break and we'll come back in 2 weeks on March 1st and talk about your job search. And then we'll look at interviewing and then negotiating the job offer and managing your ongoing professional development. So some of you are already signed up for those. If you're not, go ahead back into the registration link and sign up for more if you would like. And then if you're ready to follow up with me one-on-one, you don't have to, but if you have individual questions you'd like to answer, call the office at 212-854-2033 to make an appointment. I've gotten very popular since the webinar series started, so I'm in that phase where you probably wouldn't be able to get, so today's Wednesday, you probably won't be able to get something next week, but there'd probably be openings the following week. So just keep that in mind. And again, if you have an urgent thing, there's 2 things that would be urgent. One is you have a interview coming up quickly, or you have been made an offer and are negotiating a salary. Those are considered urgent matters, and call and make an appointment. Take the first available appointment, but then feel free to email me, and I'll see if I can squeeze you in for a quick conversation earlier in those 2 cases. But other things don't generally constitute an emergency, so then I'll see you hopefully in the next couple of weeks if you're interested. Okay. So questions. All right. Again, sorry for running over. I have to admit I've been a little thrown off by LinkedIn changing. It's a lot to incorporate, but in any case, for those of you who've been able to hang out, that's great. I'm going to go back to the questions and see. Okay, great. All right. So Elizabeth nicely answered the question. The Boolean searches were invented by George Boole, B-O-O-L-E, which is where the name comes from. So again, if you Google it, you'll be able to find out all sorts of information. Can you give us tips, any tips on how to network with people once we've connected with them on LinkedIn or in person? Okay, good. Hopefully I covered that in the latter half. But the procedure generally is once you've connected, you want to move to asking them for something. And the most common thing to ask for is an informational meeting, informational interview. If that feels too formal to you, you can simply say, would love to chat over a cup of coffee, or, would love to, chat briefly over the phone. You can phrase it however you want, but certainly asking for an informational interview or informational meeting of someone that you don't know yet is accepted language, and it's an accepted thing. And like I said, we'll talk about this more in the job search, but some people are going to not get back to you. Some people, it's possible people will get back to you to say no. That's less likely. Most people just kind of ignore it, but what you want to focus on are the people who do get back to you, and that's who you want to follow up with. And then I gave you some tips for that informational interview. And again, if you're specific, I tend to approach this in a general way. If you want more specifics, if you want to do some brainstorming on who you might talk to and what kind of things you can ask, I'm happy to talk to you one-on-one. Okay, let's see what else we have. Oops. Sorry, the question feature on this is a little. All right, well, that looks like it. Anybody else have a last minute question? Anyone who's still here, I'm happy to take. All right, well, those of you who hung out to the end, thank you very much. And I will see quote unquote, some of you in a couple of weeks. And thanks so much. Thanks for joining us.